G'day guys, Sean from Bourbon Brothers here. Welcome to our January tasting video. It's a cool one. It's January, it's the month of Australia Day, and we are featuring our first ever Australian corn mash whiskies, or hey, Australian bourbons. So we are featuring three amazing whiskies from the Grove Distillery, from the Margaret River region in Western Australia. The Grove do such cool things. So they came about when Steve Hughes, so he's originally from Harrow in London, so he had a midlife crisis, and in 1995 he's just left his job, bought some land in Margaret River and said, I'm starting a distillery. So from that plot of land in 95 and through years of hard work, they created a range of award-winning artisan liquors. So Steve, he'd just never been satisfied with the normal. So he got a copper still from Germany, and they established the Grove as the first distillery in that region. And so from there, he's worked with James Reed, the head distiller, who we'll meet in a moment, and together they source the best botanicals, both in West Australia and around the world, to make some amazing, amazing spirits, and of course, their corn mash whiskey or their Australian bourbons. So they've won awards, they've made absinthe, they've made rums, they've made single malt whiskies, but we're talking about their three bourbons. So we're going to be talking to, first of all, James Reed. Now, James is the head distiller at the Grove. He was born in Palmer, Alaska. So James began distilling at age 14, which is the perfect childhood. And he's worked all over the USA, various capacities, but making, particularly in developing and manufacturing stills, consulting people on how to use them. So he came to Australia in 2010 and he started at the Grove in 2012. With him is Matt Hatcher. So Matt was born in West England, so it's sort of covering all corners of the globe here. Matt honed his skills making scrumpy cider in West England. And then over the years, he tried his hand at brewing, and the Grove brought him on board. He's now works with James. He's responsible for a lot of their stuff, but supports James in the distilling of their bourbons. So without further ado, let's meet James and Matt from the Grove Distillery. So James, coming from Alaska to Melbourne, it's a fascinating story. Now, you know, I've had the pleasure of working in Alaska a little bit. I can't imagine a more foreign place, Perth to Alaska. How did you end up in Perth and working at the Grove?
Well, first the GFC hit in America, and we sold our house before it went down, and we just wanted to see the world. My daughter was 5 years old, and my wife and I decided to travel the world. And we get back to America, we could buy our house back as the house prices kept falling. So instead of doing that, we ended up in Western Australia, actually. And then we've been here ever since. My daughter went to all her schooling here. We became citizens, and we love it here.
Amazing. And how about joining the Grove? How did this bloke from Alaska who's travelled the world, and you've worked in making stills and consulting, doing that sort of space. How did you end up at the Grove?
I was just finishing a job working for a engineering welding company making a refinery, and it was ending, and my wife saw an ad Distiller wanted here in the Margaret River region, and I answered the ad. I said, I can distill, I can do that for you, and I was the only one that applied for it. And I've been their distiller since. That was.
Your odds of getting hired there are pretty solid then, if you're the applicant, mate. But you've done well. Now, Matt, you've journeyed from West England, so we're sort of hitting all corners of the globe here, mate. What's your story? How'd you end up in Perth, and how'd you end up at the Grove?
Well, I went off to the States. I was a lifeguard on a summer camp, and I met my now wife. She was from Perth. And then we used to come to the Margaret River region on holidays when we lived in Europe. And one day just decided that we wanted to try and see if we could, find work and live over here. And I think within a month, there was an ad for a distiller's assistant and a brewer. And even though I was neither, I sort of went to Steve and said, cider's the drink at the moment. This was 10 years ago, where everybody seemed to be drinking cider. You need to make cider, it's tax-free, just do that. He was like, yes, we do need to do that. And then we started making cider, and then I started working closely with James and then making beer.
So you'd made cider previously in your life, just at home, or how did that work out?
I mean, from the west. If you're in the west of England, it's whether you like cider or not, you're going to be drinking cider. People drink cider, and it's just sort of a way of life. So there's fruit everywhere. There's apples, so you learn how to make lots of different things, really. But yeah, scrumpy's not that complex. If you've got all the right gear, you can make a scrumpy cider.
Awesome.
Quite easily.
So the Grove has a combo still. It's just sitting there in the background. James, could you just sort of maybe show us and explain the still and its background and what you guys do with it?
Well, this is a pot and column still combination, and it's a German still, and it's a pot and column still combination, which allows us to make just about any product that we want to make here.
And you do make some fascinating products. So you're making absinthe, you're making rum, you're making gin, but the thing that sort of caught my eye is you're making a hot cross rum, I guess you want to call it, in there. How did that come about? Because it sounds absolutely brilliant.
It was someone, I don't know who had the idea. I think someone said, we need to do something for Easter. And then someone started rhyming hot cross rum. Sounds good as a name. And then I said, well, okay, Matt and I will try to figure something out and make one. And it came out first run, and it sold off. It basically sold out before I think the holiday started.
Yeah.
Right. It's really, really cool. We're doing some amazing things. So let's get on to the cool stuff, which is the corn mash whiskies. But we're just going to call it bourbon now. Officially, you can't label it as bourbon because it's got to be distilled in the US. But for all intents and purposes, it's a bourbon, right? It hits every other target. You've got the 51% corn. You're doing it in virgin white American oak casks. You know, it's hitting the barrel at the right ABV, all that kind of stuff. So it is a bourbon other than where it's distilled. Is that accurate?
That's very accurate.
Exactly.
It's made
where
exactly
are you getting
like
your barrels from? Because I reckon that'd be the hardest part is sourcing those barrels. Can you maybe talk to us about the barrels you're going in? Because these are a 50-litre barrel, correct?
Most of our bourbon comes out of a 50-liter barrel, and they're made in Queensland from American oak, and the oak gets shipped in from the U.S., and it sits in planks and racks for 2 years before they can actually make it into a barrel.
So they season it outside.
Otherwise, it could crack. So it's got to acclimatize to Australian conditions. They make the barrels up, and they ship them to us, and they're pretty expensive. They're about $600 a piece for a 50-liter barrel by the time it gets here.
And get to use it once and once only for the bourbon.
Yeah, one time for the bourbon. So it's you know, everyone talks about whiskey and I only drink the highest malt scotches and bourbon, blah, blah, blah. So actually bourbon is more expensive to make than the single malt whiskey.
Oh, no doubt. Absolutely, because it's the best spirit in the world, which we think we're all in agreement with. So can you talk to me a bit about the char that you put into the barrel? Now, use a number 4 char, correct?
Yeah, here's our barrel. And that's number 1 char. That's not enough. It should look more like this one.
And that's your number 4, that good alligator char. So, yeah.
Yeah, gator char. That's what happens there is that gets charred here, sends all the sugar and saps and everything go into the barrel where all the liquid is. It pulls that away. That barrel no longer has it there. You can't use that barrel again for that. And so that's what happens with bourbon. So that barrel gets tossed aside, and you can make rum with it. You can make single malt whiskey with it, but you can't make bourbon with it once it's used.
Right, because that's what imparts a whole lot of that flavour and the colour and everything else is from it. You're just not going to replicate that a second time using the same barrel.
All that colour from that bourbon, the color of this, comes from right here.
Yep. Because otherwise, you just have it goes in as a white dog, and that clear spirit comes out with the spirit that we know and love. Yeah, beautiful. So your mash. Sorry, go ahead.
The wood, and the wood changes the alcohol, and it takes time to do that. And in Australia, thankfully, it happens very quickly because of the temperature here.
So you're aging now in a 50-litre cask. You won't have to age as long. It'll age a little bit faster. So roughly, are you guys just got a set age at 3 years it comes out, or is it done by you guys tasting and experimenting, going, no, this is right, it's right to go now?
I more or less taste it, but I at least 2 to 3, maybe about 3 years. I know anything 3 years I know is really good. Sometimes 2.5 years is good too. Depends on when it was put in the barrel and what the heat was at the time, and what kind of summers we had, what kind of winters we had. So it is not about sometimes the age, it is about the taste of what it really is.
Not true. And those smaller barrels, if you over-age them, it'll end up being over-oaked.
Yeah, we maxed out at 5 years, and 5 years is the max for that. It's pretty oaky in that 50-litre barrel. But yeah, it works really well here in this Australian climate for making bourbon.
Well, let's touch on your mash. Now, you use the same mash across all the whiskies we'll be looking at today, of a 70% corn, 20% rye, 10% barley. Now, where are you getting those grains from?
We're sourcing the corn from Wisconsin in the States, and then the rye we get actually German rye and British rye as well, and then barley. Traditionally we were using barley from the UK, but we're actually experimenting with barley from WA at the moment. We're getting it in bulk, so it's been quite hard to source. We just want to, add something local into something that we realised was pretty much fairly imported in the grain.
Yeah, it'd be tough to get a hold of those grains. For example, the corn. I'm imagining for the volumes you need, you just probably wouldn't be able to source it in Australia.
No. The corn, we've tried it in the past, and the corn we got was substandard. It was basically chicken, maybe for chickens.
For the meal, yeah.
Yeah, and are making feed for feedlots, and so the corn we get is made for making bourbon distilling. It's made for that, and it's really super high quality and non-GMO.
Yeah, well, I think that's the beauty of sort of craft distilleries, and that is you can really focus in on the ingredients and make sure you're just using the highest quality of stuff out there.
Yeah, that's what we were doing with this bourbon. It's definitely the best stuff we can buy.
Beautiful. And bourbon was the very first thing. I think you mentioned bourbon was the very first thing that the Grove ever made. So it was the initial charter for you coming in from the founder, Steve. Is that right?
Yeah, when I came here as a distiller, and I said, "What do you want to make?" He said, "We want to make bourbon." I'm like, "Bourbon, okay. I can make a bourbon," and then I wanted to make a rum also. But the best thing about making a bourbon is you got to use a brand new barrel, and then once you're done with that barrel, you got an excellent barrel for your rum. And so that's how we played on that, and that's how we went ever since. And making our whiskeys also from that ex-bourbon barrel. You got to start out with a bourbon though, and
we're number one.
If you don't start out with a bourbon, you have to get a bourbon barrel from somewhere. And we make our own bourbon and our own bourbon barrels.
Yep. Brilliant. All right, so let's get stuck in and try the 3 whiskies that our subscribers are getting in their boxes this month. So the very first one we're looking at is your 40% Grove corn mash whiskey, which is here. So crack open that one. What's that one for me? Cheers, lads. So one thing I noticed is that it does nose above its ABV. It's not ethanol in any way, but it certainly packs a good punch on that nose there, and you get that caramel and the vanilla and the toffee all sort of coming through initially within there. And then it's that very traditional palate with the rye and the vanilla and that sort of oak finish in it. It's quite a long finish, again, for a 40% ABV bourbon within there. So I think you guys, as the original whiskey, you guys have done a magnificent job with this first one.
No, thank you. It's been our one of our best sellers since we started it.
Awesome. All right, let's take a look at something really, really interesting, a little bit different, and so it's the honey infused corn mash whiskey. So this one here, it's if you've ever had a honey infused off the shelf from Uncle Dan's, something like that, they can be shit. So this is, when I first got the samples of this, when we're looking at the Grove, you know, a little bit of skepticism, but tried it, loved it. It's such an easy drinker, and it's probably something you can do some amazing cocktails with. I'm sure that you might have some bars out there that are using this and makes fascinating cocktails, but it's such an easy sipper as well. And where do you source that honey from that you're bringing into it?
We source our honey. It's just about 1 kilometer away from here. It's a big honey farm, actually, just down the road. A Southern Forest honey. And they do a great job making honey here. And yeah, it's raw honey, and it gets infused with the bourbon.
How do you introduce that to the distilling process? At what point does the honey hit the juice?
The honey, I'm adding honey to the distiller's cut. Instead of watering it down with some water to get it to 40%, I water it down with honey.
That is awesome.
So the honey's added to it at a certain temperature, at a certain time, and at high ABV works the best. And it takes a few months to infuse together, and it to be nice and clear like it is, to really infuse with the bourbon. And it comes out really nice.
It
takes
really
a little
does.
time.
And something's on the tasting notes there is I reckon it'd be brilliant with Asian foods, that, you know, sticky ribs, that kind of stuff. That's where I would really see this one being such a great pairing with that sort of food within there. That's brilliant. And the third one in our box this month, we've got the Grove Distiller's Cut. So this is coming from James. It's I'm assuming it's what you're choosing as your honey barrel, not the honey infused barrels, but as the best barrels that you can locate for your bourbons, and putting, this is mine, this is the Distiller's Cut. Is that how it's come about?
Yeah, this one, after we've had our 40% bourbon, we wanted to make something that I think would be for more bourbon aficionados, something that you can't really get close to barrel strength bourbon, especially in Australia. And this one's only got about 4% water added to it, and it's barrels that I hand pick and taste and say, you know what, this one is going to be designated Distiller's Cut.
It's absolutely brilliant. I get much more of sort of a tropical, fruity kind of nose on this one, but then the rye really sort of gives you a good punch there on the palate as well, and it's a nice, long, smooth finish on it. It's quite a complex whiskey when you compare it to the other two. It's got a lot going on, and it's absolutely fascinating trying to pick it apart.
You can't believe it's 55% when you're drinking it.
Absolutely not. I mean, I can after I've had 5 or 6 of them, but it's a separate story at that point. So, look, gents, so the Grove's doing, so look, appreciate that. I know people are going to absolutely love these bourbons in their box. The Grove's doing some amazing stuff. So you're out in the Margaret River region. You've got a lot going on there at the distillery. Can you maybe just talk a little bit about how people can come visit, what they can do there?
Sure. We have 3 different chalets they can come and visit and spend the weekend. We have that 80 acres here of vineyard that we lease out the vineyard, but we have all the property still. So it's a really nice property, well-maintained property. We sometimes have weddings here also, and the accommodation here works real well. And we have a restaurant cafeteria here also, so people can get food and drinks.
As well as the cellar door.
Yeah, and cellar door tastings is where you know a lot of people come to here get the tastings. Instead of buying a bottle of whiskey, they can try it first, and they definitely want to buy it afterwards usually. So yeah, it's really nice for that, so people can try it first, and then
I'm sure it'll break up the tasting tours people do now with all the great Margaret River Reds that are out there. So to break it up with the Grove whiskey is a good thing.
Yeah, not many bourbons made around here, that's for sure.
No, or anywhere it is. Look, I'm absolutely fascinated with what you guys are doing. I'm a fan. It's on my shelf now. So I touched basically just before we started recording this, is I'm on my 3rd or 4th bottle now since I started trying this. So I've introduced it to my friends. Everybody's really interested and very excited that we're actually doing this here in Australia and doing it well, because there's been a couple of attempts, that haven't, I don't think, as much effort or has gone as well. You guys are producing something pretty freaking awesome here there, and it's something to be excited about. So, the guys, the Grove, the website has all their information. We'll be stocking it in the Bourbon Brothers store as well, because I'm a fan. I like the whiskey. The Distiller's Cup for me is awesome. The honey is fascinating. I'm going to be mixing around with a few different cocktails and having some fun with that as well. But gentlemen, I really appreciate your time today. You guys are doing something cool. I know I've dragged you away from the distilling today to have this chat. So without wasting any more time, get your asses off here. Go make a small bourbon, will you?
All right. Well, thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Sean. Enjoy your bourbon.
Really appreciate your time. Everybody will. Everybody's going to love the bourbon. I appreciate the time, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
So thank you so much, James and Matt, the Grove Distillery. I hope you guys really enjoy the three whiskies. I think they're just brilliant. They're doing some really, really cool things, and I think I'm going to be supporting them. I hope everybody out there can get behind them and support them as well, because the juice they're producing is fascinating. I can't wait to go and visit the Grove. Next time I'm out that way, I'm going to be dropping by and having a drink with the lads and seeing the amazing facility over there as well. So thank you to James, Matt, the Grove Distillery for partnering with us for our January bourbons. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you're enjoying your journey. Happy Australia Day. Cheers.